Hi, my name is Angelo Lopez. I am a Filipino-American editorial cartoonist based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I have the great pleasure today to speak to Wes Tyrell, right? Did I pronounce your
Angelo.
last name right?
Yeah, whatever works. Yeah,
Okay.
some people say Tyrell,
And
some people say West Tyrell.
okay.
It all
Okay.
works well
Oh, thank you.
as long as they remember to say my name. That's all I care about.
Okay. Yeah, and Wes is president of the Association of Canadian Cartoonists. And today we'll be talking about Wes's cartoons, issues facing Canada right now, as well as the state of the Canadian editorial cartooning profession. So thank you very much. And I guess I forgot to tell you before, but since we're Beatle fans and stuff, I wore this Beatles shirt.
Yes, guy. Now that's how you do it, right? You've always got to keep your Beatles
Blooming.
envelope going. Yeah,
Okay.
you've got to do it, or it could be less scary than Blue Meanie. You go, oh, hello, all right, Mike, all right,
Yeah, yeah,
ooh,
yeah.
super
That's
duper.
Paul, right? Yeah.
Certainly is.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I guess I could just start out, by asking you, how did you become interested in editorial cartooning, and who are your cartoonist heroes and
Yeah.
heroines?
Well, I think we're all kind of in the same boat in that regard. Any of us who've done any cartooning in that direction, meaning in social direction, or political direction, uh, had a zest for it as a child. Just about
Yeah.
everybody, every guy and girl I know that likes to draw this kind of stuff would be the semi nerds in school who are going, well, I really like those Watergate discussions that they're having on PBS tonight. Where your friends are looking at you like, well, why would you woo? And pretty much the universal answer whenever I ask what you've just asked to any
Yeah.
of our colleagues, they're all pretty much going to say that. And that they would have fun in class drawing their teacher or drawing their fellow students, but it wasn't just necessarily gag related things. I think it takes a little bit of an interest in history and
Yeah.
public affairs and how the world operates and the nuttiness of that. But undeniably, it's through exposure to all the masters who have come before us. When we were growing up in my case in Toronto in the 70s, seeing all the great Canadian and American, European cartoonists in the wealth of newspapers that used to be all over the living room floor. We
Yeah.
would have, the mentor for a lot of us is Aislinn Terry Mosher in Montreal. He's since the start of the 70s, he's been the guy. But
Yeah.
there was countless other cartoonists that came before him and after him that you'd see those pictures and all you could think of. Everybody I know would agree with me. How do they do that? How do they
Yeah.
draw that? How do they get the funny look to the drawing, and what the gag was, but also the caricature. Not every editorial cartoonist is interested in caricature, but
Yeah.
for the most part, you have to be to some degree, even if it's very simplistic. You've got to be into that. And in my case, guys like Terry Mosher were just so dynamite when I was a kid, and I've got to be able to figure out how to do that. And as a result, have had an interest ever since then, not just in cartooning, but also in caricature, which I know some people frown on. They say, "Oh, you should only have one look," and
Uh,
for better or for worse. I kind of like the simplicity of a clean cartoon, uh, but I also like doing, and I get work as an illustrator and someone that draws caricatures, whether it's through portraiture or for magazines, and that's I have to juggle both these balls, Angelo, and I love it. But yeah, undeniably, reading the paper as a youngster,
yeah.
I'm sure you had the same thing. Like, who was your favorite person to get you inspired when you were a youngster?
Oh, I mean, for me, it was Peanuts, Charles Schultz. I mean, he wasn't political and stuff, but I would draw all the time and stuff. So, like,
Oh yeah,
I would drive
we were
my
nuts
mom
for
nuts because I would draw on bills and stuff. So, and stuff. But yeah. But later on, I was just a nerd, it's like you were saying and stuff, and comic books, comic strips. I politically, it was Doonesbury and stuff that
that. Okay.
got me. Yeah, and then there was a local cartoonist, Signe Wilkinson. She was in the
Yep,
San Jose Mercury and stuff, and I loved her work. But they had Conrad, they had Oliphant,
sure, no,
the
all of them.
Mercury would occasionally publish them, and I was just fascinated by that stuff. So I was exposed to stuff too, but it was the library for me, not so much the wealth of newspapers in the Bay Area and stuff.
Yeah. Now, would you, when you were at the library, would you go get the best of the year collections
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to
And
take a
there
look
was
at the
collections by
best of
20 off.
1979 and look at
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
Ronnie Reagan drawings and
Yeah, yeah. So all of that stuff influenced me, but I really didn't start editorial cartoons until later into
okay.
2008, 2009 and stuff. I did it by accident and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, myself as well, as I took many years off after I went to art college in Toronto and then was compelled to see the world like many
Oh,
young people and traveled and lived in the Middle East for a long time and in Europe and the UK and in Cuba. And so spent many years not cartooning, always thinking, oh, I'll settle down. I'll stop flying from place to place soon enough, and I'll get this all sorted out. But my eye was always on that. Like that's not going to be a problem when wherever I settle, whether it's back home in Canada or somewhere around the world. I'm just going to do a bunch of drawings and I'll submit them to some editors at a magazine newspaper and I will be able to get work. And I always thought I've got the opportunity because I got a foot in both camps. I like the cartoon, but I also like to do the illustrate.
yeah,
And it was through the largesse of our friend, the mentor Terry Mosher, who saw a a painting, an illustration that I did of George Bush. I did a series of paintings during the Bush administration called Spooky Republican Tattoos.
Oh, okay.
And so himself and all the other prominent Republicans of the day
I'm curious,
were
which
drawn
Bush?
up
The
to look
first
like
Bush or
tattoos. I'm
yeah, which
sorry?
Bush? The first Bush or the second Bush?
No, W.
Oh,
And
okay.
uh,
Okay.
and so here, I'll show you this picture.
Oh,
So Terry, being the cool guy that he is, said he saw this picture and he said, phones me up out of the
yeah,
blue.
yeah.
Says, Wes, what are you doing tomorrow? And whoa, I'm working on a drawing. And he's like, well, I'm gonna come to Toronto and take you out to lunch. And him and his lovely wife Mary came to Toronto and went out to lunch. And
Oh,
I brought this picture, this watercolor picture, and he was charmed. And he just said, "Listen, I'm one of his gigs at the time, in addition to his regular cartooning, was being the an editor at Maclean's. And Maclean's is a big national magazine on current affairs. It's like the Time magazine of Canada
yeah.
for years or whatever." And I said, "I want you to join the team." And he, on the spot, brought me aboard, and him, and that's 20 years ago. Opened the door for that and for like a lot of other Canadian publications to get hired. But here's the I don't know if you see this. So there is the
Oh, that's
George
cool.
Bush
Uh-huh.
thing, which is they were all spooky and kind of Halloween related. So they all, in this case, of course,
Oh,
had
wow.
a lot of people in the Middle East at the time were certainly the Iranians were referencing America as the Great Satan. So that's where that came from.
Oh,
And
that is so
uh,
cool.
yeah, a lot of us have benefited from great relationships with older cartoonists, with mentors, and someone like himself and Brian Gable. I was introduced to him, and he was till just a few months ago when he retired. You would have met Brian in San Francisco. He was
Oh,
the most acclaimed national cartoonist, certainly the one or two most acclaimed for the Globe and Mail, which is an enormous paper. And he was able to bring me on board to freelance at the Globe as well. So the first number of years that I was doing stuff, I was working with these very esteemed people who are they can back up their arguments with just the greatest drawing, and I'm super lucky to be around them.
Yeah, so it seems like to you, mentorship was an important part of your career,
Oh
where
yeah,
older
yeah.
cartoonists would reach out to you, and
Oh,
that generational knowledge would get passed
sure,
down.
sure, absolutely, and you know that yourself. You'll recall when we had our San Francisco get together in October of last year. I got out of the cab with said member Terry Mosher and Brian Gable,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
who's
yeah,
sitting at the table, but you sitting there with Mike Theater,
yeah,
and
yeah. You
like
guys were
right
very
there,
nice to
bam,
me.
that's
I'm
like
very
getting out of
grateful
the
for that.
car with the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and Al Martino and Henny Youngman.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
what,
yeah.
like it's just a collection of absolute like who are all those guys? But you couldn't have gotten a better collection
Yeah,
of
that was a lot of fun. I
Canadian
remember that. That
cartoonists.
was the very first day too, and
Sure was.
that was a really wonderful start to that convention. I
It was
just
in the
loved
airport.
listening to you guys, even though I didn't know. I think Terry, he was doing a book or something of sports Canadian
Yeah,
figures.
yeah. Well, remember he was hassling you about your hat and your
Oh yeah,
sports apparel because he was doing a book on the Expos, which
yeah,
just
yeah.
come out, and he is the one cartoonist in Canada who's consistently able to cover political events, social things, but to marry that up with sports related things, whether it's baseball with the Montreal Expos, who are now Washington Nationals,
Oh yeah, yeah,
or the Montreal Canadiens, who until the last few years are the greatest hockey team of all time. And these are all his friends. He makes friends with all of these guys, and he
yeah, yeah.
puts them in the paper. And I don't know any other city with a cartoonist who's able to do it where it doesn't come off as tacky or a bit corny.
Uh,
His ability to be cheeky and a bit subversive with whoever he's drawing, and particularly athletes, not an easy task.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is a tangent and stuff, but you just got me curious. Is sports cartooning? It used to be a big thing, right? But is it kind of
Well, it was, but
disappearing?
not in the way that he would do it. It was more of like a Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of approach. Like, Duke Snyder last year, posted an ERA of,
Oh yeah,
0.97 and threw, 85 no hitters. And it'll
yeah,
be a drawing of like the main thing of the guy's face, and then maybe a cartoony thing of guy pitching. There
yeah,
was always a handful of artists who were good at that. A lot of times too, they weren't even necessarily done in ink. They'd be done in either charcoal or the wax crayon.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. That
That
kind of
old look,
Herblox
that,
type
that
stuff,
real
right?
heavy shaded look.
Yeah,
And I love that stuff too. I mean, I think I've loved looking at the drawing of so many of our
yeah,
colleagues. Just fantastic. But to be able to put it in a daily editorial cartoon, you go and you get back to me on that. You tell me how many you find. Not a lot.
yeah. Okay, okay. So okay, well, okay. I asked this of all cartoonists and stuff. How do you do your cartoons, and what's your schedule?
Well, the as far as the schedule is concerned, it varies depending on the job because I've got my regular gig where I'm a cartoonist for a national magazine called Zoomer,
Yeah.
and it's a terrific magazine. It's kind of like it's a current affairs magazine for Canadians,
Okay.
and it's geared to people of the magazine purchasing age, meaning it's geared for people 45 and up,
Oh,
and it's not a youth magazine. It definitely caters to folks who've been around for a while, and a lot of the issues are, you know, things that are relatable for those of us, who would be,
yeah.
I guess, I would be considered a baby boomer.
Yeah.
So it really, the things that are important to us. So that would be a regular gig for me for 10 years now. And what would happen is you end up having meetings with the editor and in this case the president, who's a guy named Moses Neimer, and we'd say, hey, what's the topic for this issue? And I pitch something, and then we'd have a meeting with lots of gags and joking around, and then the serious part of like, okay, well, this is the fun stuff, and then these are the serious issues that are going to
Yeah, yeah,
speak
yeah,
to Canadians, and what do we got to do, and then go away after the meeting and come up with a page, like it's the standard magazine page,
yeah,
and make a rough, and then from that point start submitting rough sketches. And like most cartoonists, once you have a relationship with your editor, your they know what to expect. You can have pretty scrubby looking roughs. They don't have to really say
yeah,
a lot, because they know that eventually when you do your drawings, they're going to be pretty clean. I know I've shared some stuff with you, and you can have it as a demonstration that you can drop in here throughout the
yeah,
conversation to show people what the issues look like. But after we go through all these processes of rough, and it gets closer to everybody being happy, then I will ink the characters. And I'm either going to do a traditional pen and ink with, in my case, I don't really draw with a nib very often. I will draw with the Winsor Newton Series 7's sable brushes, watercolor
oh,
inking
yeah, yeah,
brushes, the finest brush in the world.
yeah,
Winsor Newton Series 7. And
yeah,
the great thing about that, and a lot of cartoonists for all different types of cartooning love it, because it is just a superior brush in every way, and the point you can get is really dramatically good.
yeah.
So ink the piece, scan it into the Epson GT 20,000, the Cadillac of scanners,
Yeah.
and then away you go into Photoshop. And in the other jobs, certainly there's a lot of them where the work may include doing things old school with watercolor, or with acrylic paint, or with pastel, or with oil paint. But when it comes to all the work that I do for magazines, the newspapers, it's almost exclusively ink, then color in Photoshop.
Oh,
Principally because whenever there was changes to be made by editors, if it wasn't done in watercolor, oh man, just dramatic bad times, just no
oh,
fun. Like
yeah.
having to change. Often you'd have to go back and start from scratch,
Oh,
and that's no good. It's different if you am I doing things for myself, or say for book illustration, where I'm like, here it is, and once it's been agreed upon, the final work's not going to be altered by an editor.
yeah.
We're away to the races. But in this case, in my case with the magazine, or some of the other publications that I'd work for, editors love to get their fingers in there. Oh,
Yeah,
can you do
yeah.
that? Can you make this head do this? And so yeah, you got to be able to change stuff. So yeah, that's the general way of doing things.
I'm
And
curious. Does your relationship with your editor give you is that's important in terms of like once your editor has your trust, you have freedom to experiment and to suggest things. Is that right?
yeah, absolutely. In this case, it's kind of weird, because the editor, in this case at that magazine, he's a great guy named Peter Muggeridge, but he's just happy to get the finished work, and
Uh,
he is not like a traditional editor who would be saying do this, do that. The editor that I'm speaking of is the boss, is Moses, the man who owns the company, and the
oh.
character that I draw is a fictional version of him. So to him, it's like the pet project of this magazine. It's like a current affairs magazine and a lifestyle magazine, kind of like People or whatever. Uh, but at the back page, like, whoa, it's his favorite thing in the entire issue every single time. So here's our magazine.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, there's Zoomer, right? Okay, there's a
Yeah, yeah.
there. So just it's a handsome magazine, all kinds of stuff in it. But the back page, let's see,
Oh,
always
wow.
looks like this. There's always tons of things going on, and tons of
Yeah.
commentary, lots of words. They like to get their words in, and every time I'll structure it in such a way, and then they'll be like, "Oh, can we add all this data?" And you can see all that stuff.
Oh,
So there he is. That's the fictional version of Moses. So you get the idea. So yeah, it's a lot of drawing for one page, but it's a lot of fun.
Are you doing the type through Photoshop or
Yes. Oh
okay.
yeah, and I remember and Terry Mosher told me this when I first started to draw stuff for him at Maclean's magazine. He just
Yeah.
I sent a rough in, and in the rough I had some Photoshop lettering, and he said, "Wes, what's the deal here? Why are you using Photoshop lettering?" I said, "Oh, I was just I just roughed it in there just to see it." And he's like, "No." He's like, "That's you got to lose that right away." He's like, this is a bad idea. This is like that's for comic book artists to do that.
Oh,
You're a cartoonist. We don't do that.
yeah.
And it's been great advice, and it's advice that I've tried to give to a lot of people because, as he and many others would say, when you draw your own lettering, you can let the page breathe better.
Yeah.
You can make more interesting variation in line and thickness by hand, and obviously you can do that with Photoshop. But when you're doing it yourself, you can have some drama in there, and removing the perfection of the chiseled fonts, it
Yeah.
really makes stuff look better, in my opinion. I think there's nothing that kills a good cartoon faster than cheeseball Photoshop lettering. Draw it yourself, people. Easy to do. Then the excuse from a lot of people, oh, I don't like my lettering.
Yeah.
I'm not a good letterer.
Yeah.
And so who cares? Get better at your lettering, practice your lettering.
Yeah.
It's like the amount of folks today who say, oh yeah, I'd rather just, type everything. I don't want they don't even want to pick up a pen or pencil to draw
Yeah.
or to write even a note because they've spent the last 25 years with their thumbs doing this and they've
Yeah.
forgotten how to do handwriting.
Yeah.
And I think it's tragic. Everybody should know how to write,
Yeah.
you know.
I think it's maybe, like remember Pogo, Walt Kelly? He did this great lettering and stuff all
Mm-hmm.
the time and ornament. Yeah.
Remarkable. Yeah,
Yeah.
and not that everybody's going to have dynamite lettering like that. It doesn't matter. Some of my favorite cartoonists of all time have had kind of wacky, edgy stuff, like Mark Merrick,
Oh,
unbelievable cartoonist for the National Lampoon in the 70s and 80s. And you'll see behind me the Mighty Hercules.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That is I did that as an homage to Mark Merrick because I loved Hercules amongst the North Americans. I still consider to be the greatest cartoon ever made in the United States. And
Oh,
it was a series that he had in National Lampoon, and they put it together in a book. And you can't find it now. It's one of those rare things that you'll have to spend big money. If you get your hands on it, it's the funniest cartoon. He also did a thing called New Wave Comics back then. It was just so great. And but the lettering, the inking, as scrubby and as aggressive as anybody in history. But it works. Same
okay.
with Ron Hauge. Ron was also a National Lampoon cartoonist, and he stopped cartooning for a number of years to go and become one of the head writers at The Simpsons. And
Oh, wow.
for many years, he's an Emmy award-winning writer for The Simpsons, and I think Ren and Stimpy and Seinfeld and
Mm,
In Living Color. He had a
yeah.
remarkable career, and I guess has in the last couple of years has retired from Hollywood and gone back to just his own cartooning. And he has an Instagram page. Ron does, and if you
Yeah.
don't know it, you should. He's an LA guy, but I don't think anybody has held Donald Trump's feet to the fire. Uh, there's
Oh,
certainly
better
so
than
many
him.
that are good, but none top what Ron has
Yeah.
been able to come up with. Remarkable. What an artist, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, geez, you could go on all day talking about how fabulous he is. Certainly with his Trump stuff,
Yeah.
or Steve Brodner, another guy who really can combine the strength of caricature with illustration and cartooning, and put them all together for his own magic. Your own genius in California, Jack Oman. What can you
Oh,
say
yeah.
about Jack?
Yeah.
One of those guys that's he's just smarter and better than everybody. But he doesn't ever let you think that. He makes you feel like $1 million whenever he's in the room,
Yeah.
and that's why we're all such fans of him and what he does. And you know, there's there's a lot of people that we love that we'd love to. We could spend the whole day listing them, but please
Oh
continue.
yeah, yeah. But that's one of the reasons I asked that questions because when I ask cartoonists who their heroes are, I discover cartoonists that I never heard of before. And then after the talk, I look them up just to see, oh,
Good. Well, there's two right off the bat. Go look up Mark Merrick and Ron Hauge, and just those guys are, whew, they'll frighten you. And you have to be probably a little bit older to have appreciated the benefits of the National Lampoon
yeah,
before it crumbled
yeah.
and just became a name that they attached to movies. For guys like me, when I was in junior high school, that was the bee's knees. And I was like, I am going to get older. That's all I ever, not political cartooning. I mean, stuff that had a political bent, but
Yeah.
I wanted to work for the National Lampoon. That was all I wanted in life. And I got to get older and it's going to be great. And then, of course, I got older and the magazine crumbled. There
Uh,
was no Canadian alternative for that. One would have had to go to Europe. One would have had
yeah.
to go to France specifically, or Britain, and and get into the industry there to find something that was in the same ilk, like to work, for example, for Charlie Hebdo in France. I mean, they're the
Oh,
vanguard of cheeky, subversive cartooning in the same way that a lot of the Bay Area cartoonists where you live with the rip-off press and Gilbert
yeah.
Shelton and Robert Crumb and all these guys had the same rebel spirit for cartooning. I find that
Yeah,
so
yeah,
compelling, and so I always identified with the underground guys more so than the daily people
yeah,
in the newspapers. Even though I kind of wanted to do all of these things, those are the people I identified with more because you could be really cheeky
yeah.
and
You like the
in a way that you're
subversiveness of
not
it?
going to get that in a national newspaper or magazine.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff like National Lampoon, Mad, what, Humbug, all of those, they're
Yep,
gone. They're gone and stuff. Oh, actually,
they
is
might
Mad gone?
they might be gone, but they're not gone here at headquarters. Okay,
Oh, okay.
they're not gone here at headquarters. Like look at that Jack Rickard drawing of Bill
Yeah.
Shatner, great Canadian Bill Shatner, by the way, Spock, and just dynamite. Look at that. Who gets away with that cover? No, remarkable. Oh, and as we were saying before, uh, uh, you know, if
Yeah,
you were a
yeah,
kid, in the '70s, the idea to draw this goofball, Dick Nixon, like this was, you know, you're definitely, you guys have the in the States, an endless pool of fun people to satirize,
yeah, yeah,
and he was quite a remarkable character in a lot of ways, but to be able to do this for a living and make money drawing.
yeah,
Not a lot of people can do it. Uh, Not a lot of people are capable of doing it, but not a lot of people can do it because the opportunity is not there. And it's, as we've talked many times, it's the industry's been in a dramatic peril for since the invention of the smartphone, which is just a dreadful tool in my estimation. Newspapers everywhere, can certainly in North America have had all kinds of problems, but some of them have been forward thinking to some degree. Some of them are thinking more visually, and they're thinking, why are people not wanting to pick up the newsprint anymore?
yeah,
Well, yeah, we understand, it's the convenience of the phone. But why are they like also looking at a newspaper as like, oh, why would I want to do that? Well, a lot of them are as boring as can be. They've been grabbed by these barons who have gobbled up, or hedge fund clowns in New York have grabbed hundreds of Canadian newspapers, and they're all owned by one entity, by a couple of
yeah,
hedge fund bros, and they don't care what the product looks like. They don't care at all. But there's some people that do. And here's a perfect example. Le Devoir is a very prominent newspaper in Quebec, and
yeah,
Montreal, which hopefully you'll be able to come and visit us in Montreal later in the year. They have very, very prominent newspapers, and this is one called this is Le Devoir,
yeah,
okay? And they have done this before, where they do look at this. that says there that it's 100% a cartoon. This is their
Yeah.
special edition in BD, which is bande dessinée. So the entire newspaper, everywhere that there would be a a wire photo, cartoons.
Yeah.
Hello, people who have that pull the strings in the newspaper world. How about you do this once a year, once every 6 months, whatever? You do a fully illustrated issue and let the cartoonists of your country or your city or your state pull their magic tools out and do the stuff. And everybody who picks up that paper is going to be compelled to want to
Yeah.
see what's in there. Fantastic, so forward thinking, and we need more of that.
Yeah, I remember we had a talk privately. I remember mentioning that, the attention span of people is shrinking, and this should be the perfect time for editorial cartoons. But the problem we're facing is we're finding less venues to show our work and stuff. So it's kind of a weird thing and stuff. This should actually be the perfect time for an editorial cartoonist because, if there's one thing that we can do is we can grab attention quickly, even with a short attention span, so
Yes. Yeah, and then sometimes it works, and when everything comes together, and you have the lightning bolt, big story, and the cartoonist manages to nail something, and you
yeah.
have like lots of cases of it working in the States, where every year or so something big happens. In Canada, we had a thing that's may never be duplicated again. I hope it
Oh,
will, but our Halifax buddy Mike Deatter did a cartoon of Trump golfing, and there was a sad story about a father and a child trying to cross the Rio Grande and get into the United States from Mexico, and they drowned. And Trump is kind of walking over their dead bodies, seeing if he can play through on his golf round.
oh,
Cartoon got shared by tons of prominent people. Mike's a very big rock star in the world of Canadian cartooning, and a lot of prominent folks like him. So they shared his thing. It exploded in a way that I've never seen,
oh,
and he, as a result, got himself a ton of awards, including
oh,
your Herb Block award in the States, which has never happened to a Canadian before, and
oh,
he got himself a gig at the Washington Post as a result, and
oh,
so occasionally, uh, it all comes together like that. But how do you know? It requires a strong cartoon that has a really good idea, has a good execution that people find compelling to look at, and yeah, definitely a shareability, if that's a thing, and that may be a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes folks only look at stuff that has a sharing factor, like, oh, we can share that
oh,
because it's so cute and adorable, and
yeah, yeah,
and if there's like a cute monkey or a cute piglet, and they're gonna, oh, and they share that. And hey, I'm a sucker too. I love looking at animal videos. I love animals, but you never know when it is a cartoon that's going to do it, and not some kid riding his bicycle down a trail and landing on his head. We're like, oh, look at that guy smash his head, awesome. I also like looking at those, but you know we
yeah,
gotta hope that our cartoons can do some grabbing. You've got other methods of delivery too, though. Your own Bay Area, or north of the Bay Area, fabulous Californian Mark Fiore is a prime example, where he
oh, yeah, yeah,
stopped doing static images and animates his work. Does amazing stuff, and I'd implore anybody who watches this to go look up Mark Fiore and look at a different approach to getting political cartooning across, with
yeah,
short little animated things, and they're always subversive and cheeky and fun.
yeah,
And that's a great way to do it. Not everybody has got the chops to do little animated sequences, so I understand that that's not that easy, but getting your work out there, and it's a challenge today.
Yeah, I think his stuff is, if people want to, I think his stuff is in the Progressive magazine. So if they want to see some of his work, they can go there. But
Yeah.
I'm curious. Um, since you're in Canada, what are some issues that Canada is facing right now? And I'm especially curious about your conservatives in Canada. Are they sane? Or are you guys
Well,
going through the kind of
as a
Trumpist
guy that's
type?
not conservative, I'd say they're all insane. Um, but no, no, like Canada, but traditionally the Tories, okay,
Yeah.
as we call people, just like the British, as we call the
Oh, yeah,
Conservative Party of Canada,
yeah.
the was for many years the Progressive Conservative Party, the PC Party. That's what they were called.
Oh,
They've changed in the last couple of decades where they lost so badly at a general election in Ottawa that they came together, all the conservative smaller parties, all morphed into one party and became a new version of the Conservative Party,
oh,
and kind of changed in the way that they thought, well, we're getting thumped by the Liberal Party, which is the center left party of Canada.
oh, oh,
How can we get strong so we're going to get reelected and not lose seats like we did at this particular election a couple of decades ago? And they allowed kind of more fringe Western parties to come in and get a seat at the table.
oh,
And since then, it's not quite the way it used to be, where it was thought of as old school, kind of blue bloody sort of, oh well, we're conservative in our approach, but nothing too radical, and we're the titans of industry, and Bay Street in Toronto is the equivalent of Wall Street in New York, where all the money decisions get made, and it was very traditional and stuffy and old school, and that's changed to a degree. More and more, a lot of the people in the conservative world have been welcoming, much like the States, more zany ideas and participants into the fold. And there's a lot of in Western Canada, there's a lot of distrust with Ottawa, which is our capital, in the same way that people would distrust Washington,
yeah,
or
yeah,
in Britain, as they would look, Northern people would look down at London and go, oh, those Londoners, we hate
yeah.
them. And so yeah, I live in Toronto, and the hatred for Toronto at West is pretty funny. They
Okay.
just hate us, and because decisions get made here, and they feel that they're not necessarily being represented or spoken for, and sometimes that's probably accurate, but sometimes it's not. A lot of times it's the bleeding into our country, sadly, of the way media has run in the States, particularly the Fox sort of
Yeah.
folks, has it's been a steady diet, 24-hour days a day of bleeding into Canada for, I don't know, the last decade or so, and it's had its effect. And a lot
Are
of
you,
people are I agree with what they're talking, what Donald Trump talks about when he says this and this and this, and it's not even remotely applicable to Canada. But some politicians will spin it in such a way, like, well, like our friends in the States say, if you do it this way, and
yeah,
that's blah 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 blah, and we don't believe in taxes, and we don't believe, and look at they're letting immigrants in. Why do we not have a wall? And they'll
yeah.
start off with this kind of nonsense, which makes absolutely no sense. There's
Um,
always a lot of people who feel that immigration, just as you do in your country, every country feels this way. This protectionist way of looking at things, like, oh, we were here first. We came 30 years ago, so we're the original. That this nativism
yeah,
nonsense, and I've never subscribed to it. I'll always think it's preposterous. I come from a family that came from Scotland,
yeah,
and in your case from the Philippines. And
yeah,
it's like, what are you talking about? These countries were made from people in transition, people moving around the planet.
yeah, yeah,
That's how the entire world functions.
yeah.
And in some countries they're maybe a bit more static for a longer period of time, but the world operates on people moving around and bringing their great ideas and vitality to wherever it is that they go to. And
Uh,
yeah, are there going to be a few goofballs in the mix? absolutely. But there's just as many goofballs who are living here already, and
Yeah.
uh, and anybody who hangs on to those arguments are, they're naive, and it's a desperation from, quite frankly, another time. It's the 21st century after all. People should be, the idea that you would use in the States and in Canada, that the word progressive is used as a pejorative term,
Yeah.
to insult somebody, like, oh, you nasty progressives. Like, what are you talking about? Would you prefer to be regressive and
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
backwards
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking? The world is only moving in one direction.
Yeah.
We're only going forward, and try and find the best ideas, and work with them. So yeah, our conservative approach is similar to what happens in the States, a little bit different. I would say we're not at the desperation level that you find yourself in, because you've previously elected a maniac to the White House.
Yeah.
But we now have people who are having the voter fatigue with our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is strong now, because he's been around for
8 years or
8 years, whatever it is,
yeah. Yeah.
uh, and it feels like strongly like he may contest the next general election in a year or so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and which a lot of people are saying, you know, your shelf life gets to a point where people, whether they like your ideas or not, people go, all right, it's time to move on and
Oh, okay.
get somebody else to represent your party. And so, if he doesn't do that, it may be, a bit of a dodgy time for us here in Canada, because the next PC leader, they have also elected a guy named Pierre Poilievre, who is he's a populist sort of character too, who is a
Oh.
lifer. He's not even an old guy. He's, I don't know, in his 40s, and I think right out of university he got into politics and has just been hanging around in Parliament, just being a kind of a thorn in the side of just about everybody. But he's been a loudmouth, and he's been able to get more and more people on his side. And he got the in the last, I don't know, a year or so ago, he got the top seat in the progressive conservative, or not, to the Conservative Party. So
Yeah.
it's very likely he'll be the next Prime Minister of Canada, which I hope is not the case. I really hope, because I don't particularly care for it. So yeah,
Yeah.
we have the same concerns you guys do in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I wish for the best for you and stuff. I'm liberal, but when the times started getting more polarized, I mean, even though I'm liberal, I used to have conservative friends, and I saw they changed and stuff, and it was painful to lose those friendships. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. It sounds like you're not at that level of polarization yet in Canada and stuff. So
Well, we not quite as zany, but it's getting closer. We've always felt that Canada has a pretty good approach on how to run a country in a lot
yeah,
of ways, and there's warts and problems here and there like anywhere else. But for the most part, it's a solid liberal democracy.
yeah,
People get out and they vote, and they get good, decent folks to represent them at the city level, or the municipal politics, and the provincial level.
yeah,
But this populist talk that gets in vogue every decade or so, it rears its ugly head, and to me it's counterproductive. It's not thinking along the long term, and like, where do we want to be 10 years or 20 years from now? Not so, where can we be tomorrow? You can go and kick these guys out and do this dramatic thing, and all it's going to succeed in doing is getting a vote for that person who's the loudest. And
yeah,
you saw how Trump managed to pull that off. Just, you can be the biggest, loudest goofball, and people's ears perk up. They're like, oh, I love it, he's loud, look at him behaving badly. And
yeah,
they get a real rush out of someone behaving badly.
yeah,
And they just did it in Argentina. They elected a Trump wannabe,
yeah.
and
Bolsonaro,
it's
yeah,
astonishing. It's like, well, what do you mean? Your government has
yeah,
problems, now you're going to elect this a blowhard? He's not going to do anything. you
yeah,
know a
yeah,
lot of problems can only be solved with thoughtful approaches to running the country. We were just in Denmark a few months back, my wife and I, and we had an amazing time. And I just walked the streets going, holy cow, the Scandinavians, they've got a lot of things that they do right. And, principally, they really believe in themselves, and they believe that we can run a country, uh, obviously easier when your country only has whatever 15 million or whatever they
Yeah, yeah,
have. But you can run a country where you're thinking about where are we do we want to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road? And they implement plans where they have a national ethos where people, no one locks up their bikes there. No one locks up a
oh, yeah,
bicycle.
yeah,
They
yeah,
they think it's heavily frowned upon, like petty theft. No, 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 no. I'm not saying they don't have crime, but it's really frowned upon. These basic components. The idea that you would ever have a gated community with surveillance lights everywhere, like they
yeah,
just go, why would we do that? That's nonsense. And it starts with, it starts at the top, and it starts, in the way you raise your children, where they get educated in kindergarten on, and we can certainly help as cartoonists
yeah, yeah,
by calling out this goofy paranoid behavior by governments that are extreme and populist and reactionary, and say, hey, we want folks who aren't just going lower taxes, lower taxes. And I'm not saying anybody enjoys paying taxes, but in Scandinavia there, and to some degree in Canada, like the taxes are higher, but you want services.
yeah,
You want things to work, and you don't want to just be thinking about, let's just arrest everybody and throw them in jail, and that'll be the answer to everything.
yeah, yeah.
It's just education should be at the top, and that should be the way we go, and just about everywhere, and get everybody a good start in life. That's how we see it here in Toronto, Angelo.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So, okay, well, I guess I have another question. Now you've been president of the Association of Canadian Cartoonists since 2012. So,
Yes.
how have you guys been
Do
doing?
you know how long that is, Angelo? That's like a million
12.
years. Normally, guys did it for 2 years every time.
Yeah, how did you wind up being there for so long? Is it nobody
Yeah, I'm
just
like,
wanted to?
no, everybody's just like, oh, this is great. Can you do it again? And oh, can you do it again? Because we'd end up throwing these conventions, like, all right, hey, everybody, we're going to Havana. Take everybody
Uh-huh.
down to Cuba and had a riot, and then 2 years later, dragged all your colleagues, all the Americans came up to Toronto, and we had a riot there, and then we've come down to California a couple of times, and
Yeah, yeah.
we've been out to Columbus, and we've had so many great adventures. Thus, they want to keep the party planner employed. Uh, you'll do it, right? Won't you, Wes? Uh, yeah, it's the same in the AAEC. There's always a few people, like JP and Jack Oman, and people that are repeat offenders. They just keep coming back. Come on back, because people love them, and they are not necessarily love them, but they love the fact that they're doing all the work for them. And
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, you got to be into it. I enjoy doing it. I love it. I meet people from all over the planet. It's unbelievable. It's really
Oh,
remarkable. And
that's so
we're in
cool.
the midst of planning our latest one. I'm off to Montreal tomorrow, and
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
meet a bunch of the colleagues. I'll meet our friend Terry, and then our board members. Christian Vachon runs the McCord Museum. He's a curator there. And it's a great thing. It's a kind of equivalent of the Billy Ireland Museum that you guys have in the
Oh,
States in
yeah, yeah.
Columbus, where they're the main hub for collecting, curating, and preserving all the editorial cartoons of Canada since its inception, since the very first. The very first. It's not Ben Franklin, my friends, who was the first person doing editorial cartoons in North America. It was George Townsend during
Oh,
the battle for the Plains of Abraham in Quebec in
oh,
the
okay.
1600s, drawing editorial cartoons, and the very, 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 very first guy. So remarkable. And so please come and visit us in Montreal in October, and you'll be able to see these cartoons in the flesh. And we're going to have a lot of fun planning it. It should be a little bit of a smaller sort of convention in the autumn, but autumn in Montreal is beautiful. So we're going to be
Oh,
having our Canadians getting together with their American friends, and sprinkling of Europeans.
yeah.
It's always It's always good. It's important to have some European sprinkle because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you know what, the, until you, and I'll encourage you, Angelo, until you go and get out of the States, or the sake of people in Canada, get out of Canada and go travel around from other countries, go to the Philippines, for example, and
Yeah,
then take a good look at America or
yeah.
Canada. And then you really have a more nuanced, just overall opinion of where it is that you come from and where you reside, politically and socially,
Yeah, yeah.
and the perspective you can get from cartoonists from these other countries is significant.
Has that been helpful for you? Because I know you've been to Cuba, you've been to all of these different France, you've been to all these different places. Has that been helpful for you in terms of when you do a cartoon, your perspective is different because you've been to all these different places?
Oh, I think so, and I think it helps if you have the opportunity. Not everyone does, to go and live there. You got to go and stay there. Certainly
Yeah,
easier to do when you're young and you don't own a house or anything. But yeah, get out and go and live somewhere for a while, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. And that's how I kind of operated for a decade,
yeah,
living around the planet. Unbelievable. Oh my God. Cuba, for example, you know, sadly, most Americans have no experience of, if you're, kind of 50 and up, most Americans have never been to Cuba. What a drag.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas at one time, like every American would hop over to Cuba, wouldn't even think about it.
yeah, yeah,
And they are one of the, I mean, they're having some enormous problems now, and for a variety of reasons. Certainly doesn't help that there's this crazy embargo against them, since like 1959, 1960,
yeah,
and that should stop, in my humble opinion. But they haven't been able to change governments, which is not good. They
yeah,
should have been able to do that by now, and they really can't.
yeah,
But boy, oh boy, even though they have the problem where they can't, openly criticize their own government in their cartoons, they have a wealth of fantastic cartoonists who document life in Cuba, and certainly are very good at portraying life outside the borders of Cuba in very, very fun ways. Incredible cartoonists. And then, as you were mentioning with France, for example, there's no greater cartooning nation in the world than France. They, whether it's with the gag cartoons, with strip cartoons, with editorial cartoons, with comics, bande dessinée as they call them. Uh, there's no country that has a higher level of sophistication for what it is that they understand and appreciate, savor, and analyze, where they have entire programs in their universities devoted, as they do in Montreal too, but devoted to the study of cartooning and all of these disciplines. That's
oh,
why Charlie Hebdo, the magazine that caused such a kerfuffle on a number of occasions, and which resulted in the murder of tons of prominent cartoonists and colleagues, friends of ours, from maniacs. It occurred, and it occurred from people, from shallow-minded people who absolutely have no understanding of the subtleties of cartooning, particularly the cartooning that's a bit more risque and
yeah,
underground flavored, in the same way that the Bay Area cartoonists, like the Freak Brothers and Robert Crumb and or National Lampoon, and any underground flavored cartoonists cartoons that have existed. That's their bread and butter. It's not for everybody. This is the thing that no one mentions. They don't mention it enough, but they do. It's not for everybody. Not every literature is for everybody. Not every brand of music is for everybody.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that people would say, that's so outrageous. How dare you do that thing? It's like, well, it's not for you. Don't look at it. It's there's some of these artists, and particularly in France, which that prides itself on being a secular nation,
yeah,
with a strong separation of church and state. They feel very at home critiquing hypocrisy and abuse of power that comes from the big churches,
yeah,
and in my opinion, good for them, that they can do that. If it offends you, well, that should be okay. To be offended should be not the end of the earth. You should be like, I'm offended, and then you should kind of move on. You shouldn't be picking up a machine gun and killing people.
yeah. No,
And
I agree and
that's
stuff
to me
because
disgraceful. And what happened to those people is really unfair. But it's an important thing to remember that their standards are different in the same way that the American standards for rock and roll or cinema are different than they are in a lot of countries. And
Yeah.
it opened up, a lot of eyes to the American way of things through the proliferation of American pop culture for the last 100 years. Uh, there are certain people that do it well. Americans do that very, very well.
Yeah.
The French have also had strong cinema culture, but their literature and all the way down to their goofiest cartoon culture, man, they're in their own league. They're in their own
Yeah.
super league. They're like NBA champions of this world for sure. Nobody touches them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like I appreciate Crumb, like Spain Rodriguez, and all of those great under because they stretch the bounds of what we could do and stuff, right?
Oh,
They gave us
absolutely. And I mean,
freedoms
like,
and stuff.
and stuff that's like, super offensive to some people. Crumb himself has admitted on many occasions, I don't know why I do what I do, but I can't help it. He gets out his naughty ideas, and some of them are very naughty, but, you know, we should be thankful that he exists.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even
yeah.
though that sometimes his
I'm a
stuff can
fan.
be cheeky to the point that people are like, oh my God, I can't believe how dirty that is, and I don't like it. And well, that's understandable. But
Yeah, yeah,
in my
yeah,
books, he's one of a kind.
yeah. Because I was thinking, I forgot last year when Sinead O'Connor passed away and
Yeah.
stuff, and she got really pummeled in the '90s for criticizing the Pope. And then we found out about a decade later, we found out about the sexual abuse scandal and stuff.
Oh,
And
geez.
if I think sometimes you need to do offensive stuff so that you need to be able to to keep them. If you can't do offensive stuff, then you won't be able to criticize institutions when they do something really bad.
Yeah, it's very true. And let's face it, you have to understand in her case that her background of being an Irish person,
Yeah,
and until you've spent some time in Ireland, we, I don't know what parallels one could draw with Ireland and the Philippines, but
yeah,
you could certainly the dominance of the Catholic Church is something that you have in common, whether or not you have the same issues and the same dramatic issues. Uh, we'll have to save that conversation for another day. But what they've gone through for hundreds of years in Ireland was lots of ups and downs, to put it that way.
yeah.
And she had every right to do what she did. I don't know whether it was the best professional move on her part, but
No.
it took a lot of guts to do that.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
she would have known that she was going to get such a backlash that people were ready to ruin her career as a result.
yeah.
But
But
you
I
could
was
say the same
surprised.
thing about cartoons, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was just surprised at how revered she is now and stuff for taking the stand. And I'm wondering for the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists, they're revered because they're willing to take on stuff, that
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Do yourself a favor. Go to your local magazine shop that gets the French magazines and peruse them and even buy some and give them a good look and get out the Google Translate if you don't know what they're saying.
okay.
That's okay. It's stuff in French. It's everybody can learn more French. It's a beautiful language. But yeah, they're a cheeky bunch,
Yeah,
and they're often their stuff is not necessarily understood if you're not French,
yeah.
but that doesn't mean you can't try and understand it. In the same way, yeah, a lot of British cartoonists are like that too. Their stuff's so esoteric, and you really you need to know a lot about British politics and history.
Oh, yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot of very very bright people in the United Kingdom, and you look at stuff from our friend Martin Rosen or Steve Bell, guys like this. Holy cow, what are they talking about? If you didn't read that week's prominent newspapers
Yeah,
really clearly and keenly, you wouldn't know what it is that they're up to. But that's not everybody's bag. A lot of folks love a cartoon to be, easy to digest, succinct, and to the point. So it's instant. Oh, hey, bad guy, problem, answer, or here's a quick dose of reality from these folks who are abusing power. Uh, a lot of times, cartoons in Europe, they have a lot more things buried, little layers to the cartoon. And so for
Yeah.
the astute cartoon lover, it's a great ride to go look at these things. You're like, oh my God, look at that. Look at that nuance. I'm digging it, and they just want to savor it.
Yeah.
Not everybody's cup of tea, but
Yeah.
those of us who love cartooning will take it. But I think you're remiss if you're a cartoon lover, whether you're a cartoon practitioner or just a reader, to not look at cartoons from around the world.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Oh, yeah, I'm curious. I almost forgot. For the average viewer who may be watching this video, what are the dates of the Montreal convention?
The
October.
Montreal Convention is the first weekend of October, so
Okay.
third to sixth of. You can show our little poster that I made when you do your little editing here, and
Oh,
people can see it.
okay.
Yeah, and it's there's always like a component when we do these things of the general public coming out, but not often. Usually,
Oh,
it's for
okay.
colleagues, scholars, people in because there are members of your association and ours that are not cartoonists, but they're enthusiasts or they're writers or they're scholars of the art form,
Okay.
and we always welcome everybody. And occasionally there's a public forum things, which we may have in Montreal. That we'll be figuring that out in the next couple of weeks. But
Okay.
there's some stuff where university students, for example, people who are students of current history, want to come out and
Oh,
see what
that would
those
be
naughty
great.
cartoonists are up to. But it's going to be great because in Canada, we believe in a lot of things that you guys do, but we also believe in the mounted police. Okay, Mounties. So if you come, Angelo, you come up and see us, you're going to have one of these guys following you everywhere, making sure you're safe. But don't
Okay.
worry, come to Canada.
Okay. Thank you. I
Good
will
things
try.
happen.
Okay.
I'm counting on you, buddy. All
Okay.
right. Is there anything else we need to go by, or have we covered all of our exciting bases?
Oh, sure. Well, I did have a question about like um, for American cartoonists, we don't have the influence that her block once did on national issues, but we do have an influence on local issues and stuff. Is it the same with Canadian cartoonists?
Well, yeah, it depends on the periodical that you work for.
Oh, okay.
And it's changed so much since these groups have slaughtered the industry. And for example, there's one company in Toronto that started out with a magazine like that was a financial magazine, and then it morphed into a thing called the National Post, and then they ended up becoming Post Media, and they grew like crazy, buying up different newspapers, and they eventually grabbed the Sun Media chain, and the Sun, which was very popular. A lot of people would call it a bit of a rag, but a very sports and populist right wing tabloid format paper.
Oh,
But they had great cartoonists like our good friends Andy Donato and Sue Dewar, the only long term, regularly enjoyed Canadian newspaper cartoonist. And it was a female. It's unbelievable, crazy. It's you guys have the same problems in the States where there's only a relative handful of women in the industry, and it's like our friends Ann Telnis, who's just as brilliant as they come, and there should be just as many or if not more females doing this for a living. But it's anyways. I'm getting off your question, but Sue is a perfect example because I've talked to her on a number of occasions where she would get mandates from the paper saying, we only want you covering this scenario. We're not going to let you cover local topics, for example. It could flip either way, where they say, no, no, I only want you doing, covering the prime minister. You're only going to cover the prime minister. And, but hold on, there's a big story about some misbehavior in Toronto. I want to do that. No, no, you're not going to do that. Or vice versa, where the people, certain cartoonists would say, no, no, we only want you doing municipal politics. And we have cartoonist number 2. Not every paper has 2 cartoonists, but some
Yeah.
of them do. And
Wow.
we'll let the other person cover national issues or international issues. And then in that case too, in the case of the tabloid papers, they only wanted you to do it if you're going to do a kind of a bit of a pro spin, say a pro Trump cartoon. And that newspaper is just ridiculous that they do anything pro Trump, but that's the current ownership group that has that paper. There are other people like Terry Mosher at the Montreal Gazette, who has kind of a free hand. Like he can
Oh,
talk about anything. He's a revered cartoonist, so he could talk about anything he wanted. Brian Gable, who was for years the Globe and Mail guy, could talk about whatever he wanted to do, which whether it was local or international. But in his case, it also depended on where your paper was distributed. The Globe and Mail is a national paper, so to do nothing but Toronto issues would be narrow-minded, because that paper is read in Vancouver
yeah.
and
Yeah.
Calgary, Saskatchewan, and Halifax, or wherever. So that's an important thing. Depends on where the paper is being sold.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. So I guess I can just do one last question then.
Yes.
Um, what do you love about editorial cartooning, and why is editorial cartoons important?
Well, they're very, very important, because it's another way of getting information and commentary about the world that we live in delivered to you in a very digestible format. There's nobody on the planet that doesn't love drawing.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily everybody loves it, but everybody likes it, because
Yeah.
everybody did
Yeah.
it. Every single human being on the planet at one time or another drew pictures.
Yeah.
Everybody. And we all did. We were in kindergarten together. We were all drawing all the way through public school. Everybody's drawing. And then somewhere around, I don't know what grade, 4, 5, 6, you might stop drawing because, and I don't think this is really because people didn't like doing it. It's because, they either weren't encouraged, or they would become deflated because they would see the other kids are better than me. So their focus would go elsewhere. But if the teacher gave you an assignment, everybody had fun doing it until they felt they were either getting judged, or for whatever reason they lost interest. But
Oh,
it's ingrained in us. It is in us at the deepest level, because everyone had crayons. Everybody knew how to do it. Everybody has a connection with this. You have the same connection with drawing as you do with sculpture.
yeah.
Everybody played with plasticine. Everybody made something out of clay. These things are deep in our brains as a method of expressing ourselves. And when we see other people do it beautifully, there's a reason why. What's important from 200 years ago, or 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago? It's not the issues of garbage collection and the state tax problems.
Yeah.
No one cares. But you're going to go to the gallery, or you're going to go to the Louvre or the Smithsonian, and you're going to look at what were the artists doing in that day, and go, wow, look at that rendering of that person with the top hat and doing the thing. Well, that's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
different than you drawing the guy on his dirt bike, ripping through the sand dunes in Baja. It
Yeah.
is reflection of the world around you, whether it's political or social or funny, silly things that make us smile. Nobody does it better than cartoonists.
Yeah.
And I say that with full respect to the people who do cinema and the people who do animated films. Bless their hearts.
Yeah.
But the ability, and it's waned to some degree because of the disappearance of newspapers and magazines. But people still respond well to the illustrated image and the illustrated idea, and it comes in a variety of packages. And everybody should keep that in mind. If you like it, you know what? Once a year, say to yourself, I might spend $10 this year, $20 or $100
Yeah.
to get a subscription to something,
Yeah.
or favor this, or go to Substack or whatever, Patreon, and find an artist you like, and send them your $20.
Yeah.
and tell your friends, because it makes an impact, and that's the way we're able to keep this world alive, is keep trumpeting the importance, and it is important. It's important to all of us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much and stuff for our talk and stuff. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Angelo, you're the man, buddy. Let's do your editing wizardry and get some pictures up there. And if you need any dance moves, let me know. I can show you some of my famous dance moves. But in the interim period, yes, remember, the Mounties will protect you.
Okay. Thank you
Okay,
very
buddy.
much.
We'll see you.